Welcome back to episode 56 of the Grappling Growth podcast with me, Joe Testori. On today's podcast, I was joined by Ola Majekodunmi. She is the founder of All Things Money, who essentially are there to help young people with their financial literacy. See, back when Ola was 20, she didn't really have a clue about finance, but fast forward 2 years, she inundated herself with as much financial knowledge and literacy as she could. She gives her investment advice for her 20-year-old self and essentially what she would do with £5,000 if she had it on her lap tomorrow. She also talks about how hard it's been running her business, how she's created amazing brand deals with conglomerates all throughout the world, and how she's all done it by herself. Ola is actually an inspiration for not just women, but for me. I think what she's done with her business is incredible. And as someone who is growing their business and is working in the trenches day by day, I can take a lot of compass from what she's doing. She has great humility, and I think you'd really, really enjoy this podcast, especially if you're a female who's looking to start a business or is struggling to figure out where to go. She also has her own podcast, All Things Money, which the link will be below or around this podcast. As always, if you enjoyed this podcast, give it a like, share it to a friend. As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Joe Testori, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy. Ola, it's a pleasure to finally have you on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you, Joe. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Ola, I have my initial question for you, which is, what does growth look like to you?
Oh, growth to me looks like just being better than what you were yesterday. Because I think some people, when they think as business owners, I think growth, people just want exponential growth. But I think it's really important to remember that when it comes to growth, you just want to be like at least 1% better than what you were the day before.
So we've looked at growth there, and that's an answer that I really resonate with. But just before we got onto this, the live recording, we were talking about what we've done over the last few years. So I guess let's flip back over to that conversation. So 3-year anniversary being fully self-employed. How would you, in one word, summarize the experience over the last 3 years?
Unpredictable.
Nice word.
And that's like good unpredictability. And there's also like loads with running a business, but I think unpredictability, encapsulates the last 3 years.
And kind of what we were talking about, transparency with this podcast and in business, you said there are more lows than highs, and you're telling me that you're off skiing tomorrow, Sandora, which you're doing something that I'm very envious of. You're deleting LinkedIn, you're pausing your emails, and even when I sent an invite to this podcast, I got an out of office, and I was quite impressed. I was like, out of office? I didn't know these existed when you run a business. But with that, tell me about the good side of the last 3 years. Get onto the bad.
Yeah, I think, the reason why I picked unpredictability is because I delved into running this business, decided to quit my job and just go all in with All Things Money full time. And this is not to sound big-headed, but the last 3 years, the opportunities that have come my way, the things I've done, if anyone told like 4-year-old Ola everything would have happened, I would have been like, you're lying. So it's just been unpredictable in that sense, and the fact that I've just been so grateful for the opportunities that have come my way. So yeah, those are the good things, such as, some highlights, going to 10 Downing Street, delivering a speech in the House of Commons, crazy things, crazy brands I've worked with that I could have only have dreamt of.
And then if we flip that, what are the things that haven't been so exciting?
I think the lows are, the rejection, trying to pivot your business in ways that you think are going to work that maybe haven't worked. Self-doubt creeps in so much when you're constantly comparing yourself to other people and feeling overwhelmed. I'm like a one-man band, so it's very often that I do feel overwhelmed, and sometimes those feelings can be so intense that you just want to question everything when it comes to running a business. But hey, I'm still standing 3 years later.
So just talking about the rejections, if you could delve into it a little bit more, what would you say are some of the biggest rejections, and how have you been able to rebound from them?
Good question. When I say rejected, I'd say because for me, I'm not someone that just expects opportunities to come my way. I do work really hard for them in the sense that I'm often outreaching to brands or trying to reach out to organizations to host workshops for. So yeah, there's been many times where, when I thought like I've sold the perfect pitch and then it probably hasn't had they've actually been like, actually, Ola, thanks, but no thanks. And that feeling of rejection can be really hard because it makes you question whether you're not good enough, but sometimes it is just a sense of, doesn't really align with business goals. Maybe they don't have the budget, things like that. But at the time, obviously, no one likes hearing no, do they?
Yeah, at the time you think it's the worst thing in the world, and you have these moments where you're like, "There's no point running this business. I might as
Yeah.
well go to a job so then I can get a mortgage, and then don't have to stress about
Mm-hmm.
these things, and then I can have my out of office on when I am
Yeah.
out. I don't need to worry about, as you were saying, watching The Apprentice and then being on LinkedIn or coming up with content ideas and
Yeah.
things." So you also mentioned pivoting the business, and I think
Mm.
pivoting is a word that's synonymous with seasoned entrepreneurs. Anyone who's been in business for a few years, you realize that you're going on this direction and then somehow you're 2 degrees off and you're heading that way. So just kind of if we cast our minds back to 2020 when you started the vision for All Things Money,
Yeah.
what do you think it was then, if you can remember, to you would have been 22 to
Yeah. Which is just so
now
crazy.
to now 5 years down the journey?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. You know what? I think a 22-year-old Ola was so naive to how endless opportunities are out there in the sense that I graduated university. I wanted to move to Australia. I didn't want to work. I just wanted to chill and have a good time. Ended up starting All Things Money, and I literally just started that off as a hobby. But if anyone would have said to me then, if you start this business, you're going to end up in doing X, Y, Z, like I mentioned to you, I'd have been like, absolutely no way in hell. So I think you don't realize when you're starting anything, where that is literally just a side hustle, where it's just a new hobby, the opportunities that can flow from that are literally endless. And I used to really think the endless opportunities was a reason to feel fearful or anxious about. But now I've tried to really change my mindset to actually learn how important it is to be excited about the fact that you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And yeah, it's crazy what life can throw at you because, yeah, there are downsides, but there's also lots of positives.
What would you say is the biggest pivot you've made in the business?
Oh, biggest pivot.
Okay, I'll reframe the question. How did
Okay.
you think you were going to monetize the business when you first started?
Good question. So when I first started the business, monetization just looked like working with brands and just getting brand deals. So if anyone's listening, they don't know what that means. Just promoting products, services on my social media, predominantly Instagram because I didn't have TikTok at the time. Since then, the podcast, I've been fortunate that it's been monetized. Brands have like sponsor seasons, they've sponsored episodes. That's been a great way of income opportunities. Working with organizations now, so have loads of corporate brands that I've worked with, such as ASOS, Estee Lauder, NatWest, Lloyd's, Deliveroo, crazy names. So yeah, again, like I mentioned, I definitely didn't think that was even for me because when I started All Things Money, it actually was just a hobby. And I remember 1 or 2 years into All Things Money, people would ask me, are you going to do this full time? And I used to be like, no, like I don't love it enough. Well, not like I didn't love it enough. I didn't see the vision that it could be a full time job for me because I did think I was very much just thinking the only income stream would be from brands, which for some people it's enough to live off. For me, I'd like to have a bit more of a bigger source of income than just that. So
And how
yeah,
did you
it's
get?
interesting.
How do you go about getting most of your deals with these brands?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say I'm in a very fortunate position now where at least 60-70% is inbound, but I do still proactively reach out to brands I previously worked with before. If I've delivered a workshop, reach out to them, and then also actively reaching out to clients or prospective clients on LinkedIn as well.
Good, because I think it's a big thing that when people are starting their business, I think they see outreach as taboo or not taboo,
Mm,
but they look at it as like, shouldn't be doing that. Desperate, I'm chasing someone.
yes.
But
Yeah.
I really teach people whenever I'm coaching them that it is the variable that you can control the most. It's the thing that you know that you put X amount of inputs, you contact 10,000 businesses, you get
Mm-hmm.
roughly X amount of replies and then positive replies and then work from there. But everyone's hoping that they have this magical product whereby people are going to reach out to them. And I think there's
Mm.
elements of luck, but there's also putting yourself in the right position and the way how you
Yes.
portray what you do and having the right product at the right time in the right market.
Mm.
Really, really important, because maybe your business 20 years ago wouldn't have worked. People didn't want to hear about financial education at a young age. Like, oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
But now, based on how young people are post COVID, that maybe there's this, well, I know for a fact there is this big urge where that they need someone who's relatable to them, the same age and
Yeah.
ecosystem that they can look at. They don't want to see Martin Lewis giving them financial advice. It's like, well, you're 50 something years old. So,
Yeah.
thinking about how you've got your position, how do you think you relate to the market, and how do you think you've positioned yourself now? Because I feel, honestly speaking, I feel like you've got your own market one of one, really.
Oh, thank you. How have I positioned myself? You know what it is? I think I've just been, at least on social media, if we exclude LinkedIn, I've just been very candid about I started All Things Money based on the fact of that I didn't know anything about how to manage my finances. I didn't know how to invest, but I taught myself how to do it. And it came from a viewpoint of I want to teach you how to do the same. I'm this 27-year-old, at least said this at an event that I spoke at this week. I'm a 27-year-old that loves to go out, loves to socialize with friends, but can still invest in the stock market. And if I'm that person that can do that, then you can absolutely do that too. So I think, like you mentioned, the relatability factor there and just simplifying it for people is really important, which I hope I've kind of done well. And then I guess on LinkedIn, there's not many influencers on LinkedIn talking about the importance of financial literacy. So I'd like to think I've kind of, been one of the first movers to go onto LinkedIn to share how important it is, create my personal brand about the fact that I am the person to go to if you need help with your finances, or if you're, head of early careers and you want to kind of implement financial education into your programs, I'm the person to go to. So yeah, my mum likes to joke about how she sees my face on LinkedIn every single day. And that's what you want to be. You want to be that person that people are seeing every single day, because you don't want to be forgotten, because there's so much noise online. So yeah, if anyone's listening, I think it's really important you pick that niche, you stick to it and position yourself, and yeah, try and cut through the noise.
So I've got a pretty exciting question for you. Normally, I ask people what advice would they give to their 20-year-old self. However,
Yeah.
for this podcast, I'm going to flip it a little bit.
Okay.
I'm a 20-year-old, or sorry,
Yeah.
20-year-old Ola, and
Yeah.
this is pretty much where you're at. 20-year-old Ola, let's just say she somehow has, through working and whatever, she's got 5 grand saved. What
Mm-hmm.
advice would you give to her? So that this is a 20-something-year-old who's listening to this.
Yeah.
I've got this money. What do I do? What would you recommend?
Yeah. So if it was me that I'm talking to my younger self, if I've got £5,000, I would save half of that and keep it in like a high interest savings account, whether that is a cash ISA or an easy access savings account. And then I would also then, with the other half, look at investing that in the stock market, which many young people think is too risky. But if you're listening to the podcast and you have a workplace pension, you are already an investor. And people don't actually associate risk with their pension fund. So why do we do the same with our stocks and shares ISAs? So yeah, I think I would tell 20-year-old Ola to invest in the stock market, which she did 2 years later, to be fair. But yeah, not overcomplicated what it means to invest, because there are so many platforms that do all the investing for you now. You just have to have that cash to get started with. And you can now get started with as little as £1. So there's no excuse that you don't have the cash, because I'm sure if you can afford Spotify every month, you can afford £10 in the stock market as well.
Sounds like a little sales pitch, that, like you've had that ready.
I rave about investing all the time. So yeah, I've got that pitch honed in within under 60 seconds.
I love that. And looking at it from a young person's perspective, what do you think it is? Why do you think people find it difficult or scary to invest in the stock market? They see it as, to an extent, especially in London. We're both Londoners, but people have no qualms with going out, getting pissed on the weekend, spending £100. But then when people look to invest in themselves, their personal education, they look at
Yeah.
a £200 a month investment. They say, I don't have the money for it. But it's like, you do, you're just mismanaging it. So I guess I'll ask a bigger picture question. Within the UK, societally, why do you think there's this mentality amongst young people that they don't look to invest in money, and they see it as, we should just focus on the here and now, the immediate gratification?
Yeah, good question. Firstly, I think it's down to the lack of education. We're not taught the real value of investing. The UK itself now, great savers, so much so that Rachel Reeves wants to cut down our cash ISA allowance, right? So people are holding cash. We do have cash available to invest, but I think it's down to lack of education that teaches us, okay, this is what an investor you might think looks like, but you actually can be an investor too, and this is how you go about it. So I think the lack of education is there, is one of the reasons. And secondly, I think it's really important. I think it's down to the fact that our generation, sadly, I don't like to bow down our generation because we do really work hard, but I think we also crave instant gratification. So if we're looking to invest £100 a day, I think people want to be able to 10x that money tomorrow. And sadly, when I talk about investing is a long-term game. So I think lots of people, if they're not seeing that £100 being 10x within 24 hours, they don't want to hear about it, and they'd rather focus on the here and now. So yeah, I think those are the two main reasons. But if anyone's looking to invest, it's really important that you do have that long-term forecast, especially when, you know, state pension age is being pushed further and further. So yeah, I think it's really important that, yeah, we do look further afield rather than just focusing on the today.
I think a big issue that young people in general have now is there's just so many options, and when you look at your money, and I was talking to a friend the other day actually, and we were kind of like you were asking me. I've spent probably half a year out of the last 3 years out of the UK, and I'm quite my personal views in the UK. I'm quite done with it. I don't see myself there for 10 years at least. But I think when you look at a lot of people, the goal of the last X amount of years has always been to you get your degree, you then go to London, you work in financial services. But looking at people in London, there's so many people now who are being forced to stay at home because the cost of living outside is so expensive. People are spending 40-50% of their salary on rent, which it's nothing's compounding there. It's not like you're investing that money's actually going, or you've got a mortgage and the opportunities. And there's genuinely people I know who can't even save £100 a month. So they're just looking at that they're really living paycheck to paycheck, but they're living in a sense of, well, fuck it. It's I might as well just spend £100 because I'd rather enjoy my life than not be in this state whereby I'm just feeling like I'm having to chase myself. And I think a move that some people, they're lucky they've set up themselves whereby they can do it. But if you can make US money and you can work and live in South America or Bali, as you're looking at, then that's pretty much the goal. So I guess for you, what's the biggest constraint right now as to why you can't do that? Is it a case of you have to deliver in-person workshops?
Good question. You know what? I think it's a mixture of fear, and also, well, the fact that because I'd say a third of my income requires me to deliver things in the UK, but not even that. I think the fear is the fear of missing out, because so much happens in terms of like events or opportunity to speak X, Y, Z, that if I move myself out of that environment, am I putting myself in a position where my business will then regress, you know? So I think it's more the fear of the unknown and the fear of missing out rather than the financial implications of it. Because I think the business could survive me not being in the UK, but I just think in terms of additional niceties, such as like speaking at, you know, House of Lords or, you know, wherever else, I would miss out on those opportunities if I moved to Bali full time. So yeah, I've got some weighing up to do.
What would you look to try and do seasons, so to speak?
Yeah, maybe so. So earlier this year I did a month, January. Wasn't long enough, so I plan to do 3 months next time. Bali.
Just Bali for the month.
Just Bali for the month. So I probably will do Bali for 3 months next time. And then we'll go from there. And then next time it might be 6 months.
And what draws you to Bali so much?
It's funny because I know people either love it or they hate it. For me, I have friends that live there, so I have a sense of community there. I love the fact that there's so many digital nomads, there's entrepreneurs that are more than willing to give you their time for like feedback and advice. the way of living, the fact that they're 8 hours ahead of us, so you get your deep work done in the morning before the UK wakes up. So that was I think was the biggest privilege I think I had when I was away. So all of those different things just made living in Bali amazing, and the weather was 10-10. You don't get sun in January, do you? So
I was there in January 2023 and the weather was horrendous. You could not go
oh
outside.
really?
So you'd have to wear flip-flops all the time because the water had been that high. And you just...
Yeah, to be fair, yeah, it was rain. It was rainy season. Yeah, but I'm very much I'd rather have rain than snow and no sun. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, but for me, this was just extreme. It was ridiculous. It was like I was walking through a swamp. The water was up to my ankle.
Yeah, but to be fair, there were times where it was
You
like
couldn't
that,
even go
but
for a run. You couldn't even get an Uber. It's like I'm locked into this hotel because I can't go out. And look, maybe I'm talking about 5 of the 14 days I was there, and maybe you
exactly.
just lean into the fact that I just remember Bali being like this. But I do remember going down to the beach and it being
Yeah,
very nice and warm. So where's your favourite spots in Bali?
I would say my favourite place is Ubud by a mile. I just love the greenery. I love how lush it is. Secondly, Uluwatu. Uluwatu is beautiful as well. Not as busy as Canggu, but also Canggu will always have a special place in my heart, and I'll probably live there if I could. So yeah, Canggu I absolutely love, but I love the other places for different. I love all of them for different reasons.
Did you head over to Gili Tea?
I did this time round. I loved Gilly Tea. I feel like maybe because I have travelled quite a lot, I've been quite spoiled. So wasn't I was expecting big things from Gilly Tea, and I've seen beautiful, better islands elsewhere. Sadly, I hate to admit that.
So looking at a wider radar, where else do you have on your list as to where you'd really like to go to that you haven't been to? Three
Oh,
places.
good question, and it's on my radar to go in October. Guatemala, Nicaragua, and Belize.
I can give you recommendations for 2 of the 3 countries there. So
Please do.
Guatemala is there's a volcano there called Acatenango.
Yes, my friend recently got engaged there.
What with the volcano erupting behind her?
Well, yeah, with the background, yeah.
It's quite funny that quite a few people. So I'm in Brazil right now, but quite a few people who I've met on this travel stint and before. You look at their wallpaper, you're like, oh yeah, Acatenango, and they're like, you've been. And for me, that is top 5 life experiences ever. So
Wow.
there's 2 hikes, so you can hike up and you've got the view of the volcano, and it erupts quite frequently, every 15 to 20 minutes. Don't quote me on that, but then and it erupts over one side, so it'll never affect you.
Yeah.
You do this second hike, which you essentially hike for about another hour and a half, and it's called Fuego, and you feel like you're on Mars. So it's like black volcanic ash rock.
Yeah.
And when I did that second hike, the sun was setting, so I've got straight
Wow.
clouds all to my left, and then to the right. You feel like you're as close to heaven as you can get to, and then this volcano is just erupting, and there's like 100 people all along this ridge. No one's talking. Everyone's just like, "This is breathtaking."
Right. I'm gonna have to go on that trip now, Anna.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll circle
That's
back
why
on this.
I
We'll
couldn't
circle
speak
back on
highly
that.
of it. It's an incredible country, and the people are so lovely.
Oh, amazing. Central America will always have a special place in my heart. I travelled there 2 years ago, and yeah, I want to go back. So hopefully this year is the year I make it happen. Fingers crossed.
Nice. And I think Nicaragua. I didn't go to Belize, but I think I've heard great things, and they speak English there, which makes it a little bit easier. Do you speak
Oh,
Spanish?
brilliant. Un poco.
Oh, I'm so confused now. That's just such the gringo British response.
You know what? I taught myself specifically for my Costa Rica trip when I did go. And I was having conversation with the taxi drivers, but obviously when you live in the UK, you just don't get to practice it. So I have lost a lot of it, but I did teach myself for that trip, and all of them, all the locals were so impressed. They're like, "You taught yourself in 3 weeks?" I was like, "Yes."
Nice. That shows the
Yeah,
determination you have when you put your mind to something. And
mind to it. Yeah, my mind and time.
how did you find Costa Rica?
Oh, Costa Rica was stunning, but we also did Panama, and oh yeah, Costa Rica was very expensive. Very expensive. Well, actually, not very expensive, but just more expensive than what I was expecting a Central American country to be like. And then we did Panama and Colombia, and Panama I think was definitely my favorite.
How comes?
So we visited Bocas del Toro, and that's like a little island just off of Panama. Sorry.
Did you go to Filthy Friday?
No, we weren't there on a Friday, sadly, which is probably good. It was probably a good thing because we were actually were sober the whole time. We actually got to enjoy the island. But we did Bocas, and then we also did the San Blas Island. And like I said, I've travelled to many countries, and I don't think I've seen bluer waters, whiter sand in all my life. It was just paradise. So yeah, it was just stunning, 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 stunning.
They are incredible. They're just
Yeah,
this like the archipelago
literally.
around. And so, did you do the boat travel from Panama City to whereabouts is it going? Colombia. It's not Cartagena, is it?
Colombia, we did Cartagena.
Cartagena. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice. Nice. There we go. So
yeah,
you got those countries you want to go back to. So I guess kind of
yeah.
looking at the vision for the future with the business, if you were to kind of map out ideally how you'd like the next 12 months to look, how do you think it looks?
Joe, people ask me this all the time, and I don't have an answer. I'll be so real. And the reason is because I feel like if I set a certain goal, no, the reason why I say that is because all the things I've achieved in the last 3 years, I couldn't have even put it as an actionable goal because I never thought it was possible, right? So I'm just kind of open minded to what the year will bring. But that being said, I am currently studying to be a financial advisor. So my biggest goal right now and aim is to be qualified by the end of this year because it's been a long 12, 13 months. So I'm looking forward to hopefully this year being the year that I qualify and then maybe a book. Maybe a book. You heard it here first.
There we go. Wow, those are two impressive feats. You've got your qualification, which do you feel that qualification is like the rubber stamp for you, so no one can say, "Oh, well, where's this financial advice?" That's like the certification.
Yeah, and you know what? Funnily enough, I don't think I need it because you get the odd couple of people that always ask, but I don't think I need it. But I think for my own imposter syndrome, I'm still only a girl that has only got her university degree, has never worked in corporate, and so I think that would just, yeah, I think will be the rubber stamp for my own self achievement and worth rather than for anyone else.
And then the book, is it all things money? Or...
Who knows, Joe? I need to find a book agent first. So if there's any book agents listening to this, then come hook me up.
There we go. I think you do very well both naturally, just because you've already built up the authority. You've got a lot of. I think a big thing that you tick boxes with regards to social media is relatability. There's a lot of.
Thank you.
You get a lot of these guys who are just like these jacked American guys, like this is what you need to do, and I think they kind of build this cult, so to speak. A lot of people just want relatability. They want to look at someone and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm like this person, not
Yeah.
this guy who's telling me that I slept underneath my desk for 2 years and I sacrificed all of this. It's like, okay, cool, but there's a place for everything in society.
Yes. Literally. So yeah, I'm glad you said that because that's what I try to. Yeah, I try my best online to show up as authentically as me as possible. And sometimes you worry if that comes through or not, but I'm glad you confirmed that. So that means a lot.
Good. I love books, and I know because you're looking to write a book, and from before, what finance book recommendations would you give to people? I've got my kind of like 3 top finance books, but I'd love to hear your opinion.
Okay, so
I can see how much they mirror up as well. Actually,
I don't think that ours will mirror up. I'm not a rich man, poor dad type of girl. I'll be so real. So yeah. So, first and man went broke. So the fact that that's happened, I actually have no interest in reading his book because I'm just like, you don't practice what you teach. So yeah, I've never read his book, and yeah, I've just had female authors that I just have preferred to read, and UK based people as well. So the first one would be Money: A User's Guide by Laura Watley. She's journalist, but now also book author. Breaks down 6 key topics of finance, so like budgeting, saving, investing, house buying, money in relationships, all that fun stuff. And that was the book I read the year before I graduated, which made me realize I actually have no idea how finance works in the UK. And I've always been pretty savvy with my finances. Another book that I'd recommend is Girls That Invest by Simran Kaur. That I think is really important for any females that want to invest but feel like it's not for them. That book breaks down investing for those that actually, breaks it down so simply that you actually read the book and you're like, oh, these are the actionable steps I need and can take. And then thirdly,
All things money.
yeah, my ebook for now. It's not yet a physical book, but I yeah, let me plug my ebook as my third recommendations.
Have you? I haven't heard of the first two, especially the second one. I guess I wouldn't
Yeah,
look for that specifically. But
yeah.
first one I'll definitely put on my reading list because I think
Mm,
I find financial literacy something that I need to go back to every 12 to 18 months. I just want to kind of you forget stuff, you regress, and when
yes.
you know stuff, you're like, actually, I need to get
Mm,
like. It feels like a mini crash course on finance. Have you read The
yeah.
Intelligent Investor?
I haven't, no. Would you recommend?
I think that's the Bible of investing.
Interesting. That's a big statement, Joe.
No,
I'm going
in
to make a
fact,
note of that.
I read it's about 600 pages, and I read it cover to cover back in 2020, um,
Okay.
and it made me. I started dollar cost averaging, and I looked at why you should start dollar cost averaging, and it didn't come up with theory. It had empirical
Mm,
evidence to say this is why you should dollar cost average, and it used if you had, for instance, we used the example of £5,000 earlier today. It would
mm,
say you've got that 2.5 grand that you want to actually invest in the market. Instead of just throwing it in as a lump sum, you would dollar cost average it, and it looked
interesting. Yeah.
the process because in economic terms they say that markets take a random pattern of walk. So we never see, except for pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals are quite flatlined for years, and then they release some news, and then it pumps up, and it was just
Yeah.
it'll go up like crazy. But if you look at the natural regression of any chart, it's continuously up and down, and some
Mm,
generally moving in a downtrend. Hopefully, most are moving in an uptrend, but it's looking at that. That if you look to dollar cost average, you're gonna dollar cost average 200 at £2,500 in a year,
yes.
or cost averaging £200 odd a month, pushing that in, and then you get the best returns there. And
Yes.
it's forwarded by Warren Buffett, and
Mm,
he essentially says that Benjamin Graham, the author, I think it was written in the 30s, he's like the beacon. He's the guy that
wow.
really follows it, and it's been rewritten a few times. But that book, I think, if you have the patience for it, that'll teach you pretty much what you need to know. And even questions. I remember when I read this, but 10 questions you need to ask a financial advisor when you're looking to work with them. And I was helping a friend out at the time with that, and I was like, sorry, is this an interview? It's like, well, no, but I want to. And they were like, if they can't answer these 10 questions, don't work.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Some of those 10 questions.
Can't remember the 10 questions. ChatGPT was helping me.
No, I'm definitely gonna have to check that book out now. Well, I've got a flight tomorrow, so I may have to add that on my Kindle reading list.
If you finish that in a flight, then Andorra, that's what, probably 2.5 hours from the UK. I'll be
Yeah,
thoroughly
there's no
impressed.
chance that I'm a quick reader, but not that quick.
Yeah, that would be insane. But those book recommendations, I think it's always good to get a different scope. And
Yeah.
I don't think I've asked people about investing related books there. So that's a really good avenue. So back to the advice that you'd give about money. Just
Yeah.
generally, what advice would you give? What advice would you give to 20-year-old Ola about navigating her 20s?
Oh, those are two very different questions. But seeing as you want to know what I'd tell Ola at 20, I was already a budgeter, so I'm not going to touch on budgeting tips. One thing I would say, my first tip is to make sure the goals you want to achieve are your own goals and they're not based on societal pressures. Now, the reason why I say that is because I've worked with so many young people that are like, I want to buy my house, I want to do this. And I'm like, okay, let's go back to this goal. Why do you want that as your goal? And most often than not, they can't tell me why they want that goal. And I think that is because social media or society has made you feel like you have to achieve that goal. And when I graduated university, my first savings goal was a deposit to buy my first house. Whereas now my goals are so different. I want to experience traveling a bit more, and I want to just be a little bit freer from having to have the burden of a mortgage. So I think that would be my number one tip to her. Tip number two is to be kinder to yourself when it comes to managing your finances. Now, I say that because my mum likes to call me a hoarder of money. I like to save every single penny I can as possible and hold on to that alongside investing. And I think at one point, at least in my earlier 20s, it was a really unhealthy habit to have. So I'd say be kinder to yourself. Money comes and goes. I think that's really important. But also, you manage it wisely. But just, yeah, I think I held on to it a bit too much than what I needed to. And I think thirdly, to keep reflecting over your goals. So, I used to just solely invest in the stock market. Now I'm self-employed. I need to invest in my pension. So yeah, it's important that you keep reflecting on your goals and making sure they still align with what your end target is, I think. So yeah, got tips to myself and tips I'd share with someone else are very different, but those were the tips I would say to my 20-year-old person back then.
And away from money and work, business, what would you say to yourself internally about how the next 7 years look, and how you mentioned being kinder to yourself, but what else?
To my younger self,
Hmm.
that everything always works out. And I don't want to sound woo-woo, but one author that I was at an event at the other day said that sadly you can never predict your life, but you can always connect the dots backwards. And if any, like now looking back on the last 5 years since I graduated university, oh my gosh, the amount of times that I'd cry myself to sleep, or I was anxious, or I was scared about the next week or next month was going to look like. Even just dating back 10 years ago, like there were so many peaks and troughs in life, but I can now tell my younger self it genuinely all works out. If you didn't get that job, or COVID happened, it all works out in the end. So that's the final thing I'd probably say to my younger self.
I can connect with that, and I think a lot of life feels like a butterfly effect. That
Yes.
when you think that one thing that you really wanted, you obsessed over, it doesn't work out, and then you realize you go in this complete different tangent. And also, one thing that I've really tried to say to myself, and I'll coach a lot of my clients who I coach are younger than me. They just kind of like money. They want the 10x returns as quickly as possible, and they want to find the new crypto that's just going to
Yeah.
absolutely pump. But when I loop stuff back, you can never split test life. When you take your plane, if you've got a choice of going to either Bali or going to Guatemala, you can only take that one flight at that time. And I've experienced it so many times where I've been traveling and I've met people, and I stayed in a place for a bit longer than I met this person, or this thing happened, and it's like that was incredible. But then equally,
Yeah.
I might have gone down the complete opposite road, and something incredible could have happened there, but it might not have. And I will never ever know, and we will never know it. So it's just a case of trying to take the best foot forward that we have. And ultimately, as humans, as people, we never want to. If I said there's a pothole right there, don't walk there. You won't walk there. But if you walked and then you just tripped up because you forgot it was there, you don't want to hear "I told you so." It's just what I didn't intentionally mean to twist my ankle,
Yes.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
it happens. You end up twisting your ankle, and metaphorically, there are far worse and more things that happen. And it's just about trying to take your best judgment call at the moment to
Mm.
see what happens and just work with it. And I don't know, maybe I'm getting a bit too philosophical here, but
No, but I agree. I completely agree. And I know there's probably people listening to the podcast that, life probably isn't working out right now, or, they're struggling financially. And I'm not going to say struggles don't work, like don't exist, because I struggle. I've had a really tough week this week, but I know in hindsight, everything will work itself out, because I've lasted so many things I didn't think I was going to survive, and I'm still standing here okay. So yeah, I completely resonate with what you're saying.
that's it. I also think I was on a coaching call with my coach just before this, and I love his mindset, and that's why I invested in him. But someone in our program were mentioning how uh, they're kind of looking down a barrel. They need to make money quickly within the next month, and
Mm,
like, what would you do? And people giving their opinions and insight was the coach and another guy. And I think I've been in those positions where I remember for me, this was April 2020, COVID just happened. I started looking at jobs on the Asda job board, and
wow.
I was at a point where I was like, it's not working out, it's not clicking. And then you realize that you start working on a few things. And I think what
Mm,
we worked together, it would have been August, September 2020, was it?
yeah, 2020, yeah.
And you realize that how quickly things move if you, it's the cliche what they say now, but lock in. But really, if you commit yourself towards something really intently, I believe in a
Yeah.
90-day period you can see transformational growth in yourself. If you just, and I really think it comes down to making a clear identifiable plan. And even if you don't stick to the plan, or you don't hit it 100%, it's about the inputs and deliverables. And I think people attach themselves too much to outcomes. Oh, I want to have a
Yeah.
business that's making me 100 grand a year. But it's like, well, reverse engineer. Ola turned around and she went on LinkedIn and contacted 20 people a day, and then went to 2 networking events a month. And if you know that you need to put all of these variables in and inputs in to
Yes.
achieve the outcome, I think that's what a lot of people struggle to connect the dots with. It's what inputs do I need? It's like making a cake. We think
100%.
cake only rises if you put certain ingredients in.
Yeah. And also, the cake only rises, or, bakes, when you actually complete the whole steps, right? I think a lot of people that I've also worked with or spoken to have tried to start a business, or they tried to start an idea and they gave it their all for 3 or 6 months and it didn't work out, and then they just decided to give up. And I was literally saying this again the other day to a couple of friends of mine, in the sense that, again, my LinkedIn can look so glossy, but that's like grinding for 5 years to get to what I'm doing now, and I still think I'm only haven't even scratched the surface of what I can achieve, right? So I think it's really important that if you are starting something new, or you want to start something, consistency and graft is so important. And when I say graft, I'm not saying working 25 hours 8 days a week. I'm saying continue grafting, even if you're not seeing the results just yet, because you literally don't know when you're probably going to get that breakthrough.
That's it. And it's like speaking so many like cliches here, but you engineer your own luck, and the amount of times you show up. If you just turn around and you show up for 3 to 6 months, it's the
Mm,
familiarity of being front of mind. And I've had so many deals that have come in where someone has contacted me after 18 months and said, "Hey, just because you gave us this, or you just followed up in this manner, that's why we're coming back to you." And it's just,
yeah.
we kind of like investing. If we take the principle of investing, if you were to put £10,000 into the S&P 500, 8% growth per year, the growth would look like this. And then after, what is it, like 15, 20 years, that's where it just exponentially,
Yeah. Yeah.
just rate of compound. And I think there's a big impatience gap with young people, whereby, which I understand, we always want the best for ourselves.
Mm,
I think at times we think we're better than what we are. We deserve
yeah.
more than what we get. But just taking that approach where you can take a step back, be a bit more calm, and say, hey, actually, what is it I want this for? And it's kind of asking that question to yourself, like, I
Yes.
want a mortgage or I want a house, but for what? It's what to make my parents happy. Or the way how our parents lived 20, 30 years ago, society was set up in a very different way, whereby
Very.
you only had to earn 4 times your earnings to then get a property, or the multiplier of your mortgage was 10x. Now
Yeah.
times your earnings, but then property prices are exponentially more
Like
expensive.
10 times more expensive than they were before.
Yeah, like a 200 grand house on a, I don't know, it's quite like combined £30,000 salary, you can get that. But now it's like, it's just berserk, especially
Yeah.
in London. It's a
Yeah,
bubble.
it's a joke.
People out. It's crazy. Ola, where can people find you and what's next for you?
So what's next is I'm putting all my hard graft into studying. Oh, I don't know how, I'm not great yet, but yeah, that's the main thing that I'm working on. And then All Things Money turns 5 next month, which is crazy. So we're doing a little party to celebrate. But if anyone wants to find me, kind of explore or be nosy about what I get up to, then you can find me on LinkedIn, Ola Majekodunmi, Instagram, All Things Money _, TikTok's the exact same, and my website, www.allthingsmoney.com. And we also have a podcast, which is the All Things Money podcast, which you can tune in on every single streaming platform.
Lovely. Ola, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.